Welcome back to another development vlog of Classic-Flyff. My name is Darian, and first of all, Happy New Year. I know. We are late to that party, same as with this dev vlog, but better late than never, right? It's almost 2.5 months that have passed since the last dev vlog. We already said some words about this in the Discord channel, but for full transparency, I will summarize them here as well. This is a hobby project, so there's no company behind this, no one that will pay us to do this, so we do this fully in our free time. That free time was pretty limited due to real life work, projects that needed to be finished first, and the Christmas holidays that we also enjoyed with our families. But enough of why we could not work on it, and let's head over to the part what we actually did, shall we? We increased the inventory space. Not actually needed, as we are not a high-rate server, but I guess everyone is used to having a bigger inventory anyway. It's just a quality of life feature these days. Eventually, you have noticed that there was a back icon in the inventory as equipment part. This is the system that is not in the source, but we guess that it has something to do with the weight of items that is shown. Probably it was meant to work in RPG games where you have a weight carry limit. This is nothing Flyff ever used in any of the known version, as it probably never even was finished. So we were thinking about what we could do with that. The idea here was to create something additional as gear that could switch up the gameplay a bit. Of course, not only the icons, but also the effects are work in progress. So one thing we added was a magical bag, where you would not lose any MP when equipped, or something more useful, like not getting attacked by aggressive monsters. This, for example, would be perfect for your supporter to not get one-shotted anymore. Also, we did some smaller tests, like implementing a scroll for XP amplification, but for skills. This was a user suggestion, so feel free to suggest anything you want on Discord. Just make sure it somewhat fits in this old-school Flyff experience. The next thing on the list would be the questing. In an earlier devlog, we already talked about that we want to have quests. As the source is built for multi-language, even though we only focus on English, there is a need to also implement all the languages, otherwise it simply does not work. We made some test quests that work as expected, and also the quest system now supports giving out positive karma. If you remember, karma is one of the core systems of Classic-Flyff, which means if you have more positive karma, you will gain more XP. Something you also have seen in earlier devlogs is this ship system that was later on completely abandoned and only being re-implemented in Flyff Universe. The original system, even though heavily broken, was meant to support flying yourself and have the ship in somewhat of an autofly mode. Nothing fancy, just flying around in circles. The client-server synchronization in Flyff, even to this day, is quite bad, but in this old source, even worse. Our goal was to have a system where the ships would have routes that they automatically would follow, similar as Flyff Universe has it now. And later on, make use of this system where ships could reach other islands you could not fly yourself, so they have a real purpose. But the first test looked as smooth as Flyff ran on my first ever PC. Have a look yourself. Luckily, this was manageable over time, and this way it's possible to create what we had in mind, and this will surely add to a more immersive Flyff world. Upgrading. Well, who would have thought was broken too? But also the system was different. Gear did not directly break, but de-leveled if the upgrading failed. So back then you could just gamble and hope for the best without losing your item. Pretty cool, but also kind of weird for Flyff as well. I'm not sure if this is the best way to go, or to go for a hybrid way, or just to use the regular way version 6 already had. Also, one fun fact here, the glow, did not exist here yet. It was just a bit of sparkling, regardless how much your set is upgraded. So that was everything that we did before we had to stop 2.5 months ago. The final test that we did was to replace the expired SSL certificate for the homepage. We didn't even notice that ourselves that fast, so thanks for reporting that. While the holidays were going, we tipped our toes a little bit in web development, mainly to see if we could pull this off when using assets in the original form, not converted. This is rather something we were curious about and will actually not pursue right now. or not even this year, but eventually something we will pick up again in a couple of years. But this was just a quick test we did before starting to work on Classic-Flyff again. So what did we do this year so far? Mainly performance improvements. Flyff was always kept at 60 frames. Actually, this is even already very generous compared to the China Flyff version, as that one is kept at 30 FPS, or at least when I checked a couple of years ago. We increased the max frame rate to be the same refresh rate as your monitor. It just feels smoother this way. Also, fun fact here that they were already pretty close back then to get this working. They just did not work with delta time correctly. Probably no one of them could ever imagine more than a 60 Hz refresh rate on a monitor, so they were just like, well, not worth it. Some smaller performance improvements were also done by making the frustum culling the game uses a bit more performant to improve 2D render speed, having objects that are opaque not being sorted each frame, improving land visibility checks, and oh yeah, the shadow settings, except for the lowest one, was broken somehow. Object blending, along with objects being actually loaded in not instantly when requested to lower the frame dips when you enter a more crowded area, was implemented as well. And then the big decision kinda has taken its course. Everything started with a bug when changing worlds. Nothing no other dev has never experienced, a simple crash when changing the world. But when those null pointer exceptions were fixed, a very strange behavior happened. When changing the world, the character actually became an NPC or a monster. Kinda funny to see, right? But this led us to a bug chase which more or less required us to go through the complete code base. Something we did not do this deep before, and when going through the code, it was constantly like we found potential issues left and right, not only client crashes, but an enormous amount of potential server crashes, duping, breaking the database, characters that would not be able to log in anymore, and so much more. At this point, we had to face a very clear and obvious fact. We made a big mistake when starting this project. We were way too hyped and started working on it as soon as we could. To phrase this in non-development terms, we tried to build a nice house, but without checking if the ground we were building on is even solid. It's not solid. In fact, there's not even something you could call ground here. So we had a long discussion on how to proceed. There are actually only 3 options to choose from. The first one would be the most easiest one, and to tell you the truth, also one that would probably have been picked by others. To, well, simply give up and call it a day. The second one would be to continue, fix what we see, and after the launch, have a constant issue of being offline due to bugs, crashes, along with rollbacks, of course. Similar to other servers' launch days, but constantly, probably over a phase of a year. And let's be honest here, no player would stick around on a server that is constantly offline. So what's the third option? To basically start all over again. To start with a solid base, downgrade it to version 6, implement all our changes and systems we already have done. This is not as easy as it might sound, as over the years quite a lot has changed, and it will be a pain to do. But we believe in this project, so we will go the hard way. We will make it happen. We will start all over again. And honestly, we already started. And while recording this, I constantly see pop-ups on my screen when Penreal pushes a new change. So stay tuned for the next devlog where we tell you more about this process. But regardless, the most important factor is that we get seen. So please share this project. Join the Discord server, like the Facebook page, because without your help, this project is nothing. So tell your friends. Classic-Flyff is your new old home.